We are very happy to meet you today on behalf of Tamil Diplomat's news team, and I would like to ask some questions. First one is, how do you see the recent political change in Sri Lanka, and what kinds of impacts could this change have on the Tamil questions?
This change is primarily an electoral change, and if we want to understand this as a political change, and for Tamil people, this is an electoral politics, and for the Sinhalese, this is a change in terms of the leadership, the change in terms of leadership, but the system remains intact for the Tamils. And look at the irony of this democracy. And Tamil people have been given the choice after the war in 2010, and they have been given a choice between Mahinda Rajapaksa and Sarath Fonseca. Then in 2015, they were given a choice between Rajapaksa and Maithripala Sirisena. And how does this and can be seen as a choice for the Tamil people? Tamils are victims, and their rights were abused. They were subjected to mass crimes and war crimes and crimes against humanity. Now, if you ask these people, if you give them a choice of making a decision, then you give them a choice after the two names and then give them a third name or say none of the above. Then we will consider that as maybe if the Sri Lankan democracy has not progressed, electoral democracy has not progressed that far, but forcing the candidates, forcing the people, and forcing the same people who are abused, who are oppressors, and to asking people to choose between the two is a much worse form of oppression. And this happens in all the oppressed people in the world, that they have no choice between the two. They have to choose the lesser evil. This is not even the lesser evil. They are of the same kind. They are of the same nature. Now, then in terms of the transition in the electoral politics is that, and if Tamils had given such a large number of votes in favor of Maithripala Sirisena, then these political parties which articulated, which sought the votes of Tamil people, on what basis and what mandate, and how did they transfer these votes to Maithripala Sirisena, and they have to remain accountable to the Tamil people by saying that we transferred your votes, but we will bring back the rights and dignity. But what do they mean by this transfer?
Is it acceptable to give time for Sri Lanka to conduct its own investigation at this point of time?
Not acceptable, because there has been a process. There's been a process in the last 6 years, and more particularly after 2009. And if you remember, in 2009, in June, in the United Nations Human Rights Commission, there was a resolution appreciating the Sri Lankan government for defeating terrorism. Then in 2010, and there is invoking a resolution towards the war crimes and crimes against humanity. By 12 and 13, that the Sri Lankan government bargains and seeks the internal domestic mechanism. The international community grants this, which is politically right, to give the first opportunity to the government and the country that it must explore justice internally. And all opportunities were given. But that LLRC, it has enormous faults, inconsistencies. Even that Sri Lankan government refused to implement. That is the precise reason why the international investigation process was initiated in 2013 and 14. Now, if Sri Lankan government says that it needs another opportunity, it completely kind of not only reverts back the process of justice, it undermines the international system.
Is it reasonable to give more time for Sri Lanka to conduct its own domestic investigation now and delay the submission of Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for the Human Rights International Investigation report?
I think the first consequences is that that reveals the victims and the oppressed people have no place in this international system. They are they've been abandoned. People can be oppressed, people can be abused, and then the oppressor can have all the choices, when to do the investigations, how to do this, and then can go back and forth This is a total undermining the destruction of the international trust and the international mechanism. This should not be allowed. This should not be allowed by the international community, and more particularly by the Tamil people and throughout the world. That Tamil people should express that there is an international process. We are in the middle of it. Let this process go on. Let this process go to the next level. Then how is it acceptable to revert the process by seeking for domestic mechanism, which has already been, that opportunity was given, and then the findings have come out with the report of the LLRC, which with all its inconsistencies, Sri Lankan government refused to implement that. Now you are asking for another opportunity. And how it's not even irrational. It's not logical. It is not rational. It is completely anti-people. Be it Tamils or be it any community in the world. And this is the awareness that the Tamil people should have, and the solidarity that the Tamil people should establish, and more particularly that if the international governments believe, because of that Rajapaksa has been defeated and then the new government in power, then it is all the more responsibility for them to establish that international process. If Rajapaksa is defeated, then is what you call his impunity is also reduced. And you cannot go on defending Rajapaksa. But while the Sri Lankan government now presently says that we will not hand over Rajapaksa for international investigation, the intention is very clear. You have to look at the intention. If the Sri Lankan government says, let's defer this process, or let's reverse this process to domestic mechanism, but my humble pleading is that look at the intention of the Sri Lankan government. Is this an intention to deliver justice or to deny justice? It is purely to deny justice. This is what the Tamil community should understand, should take responsibility about the international mechanism.
What are your views on the Sri Lankan government's announcement with regard to the implementation of 13th Amendment?
No, see, the 13th Amendment has been part of the 1987, the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, Rajiv Gandhi Jayawardene Accord. The Indian government has been holding this as the critical plank of its diplomacy with the Sri Lankan government, but it has largely been diluted. Several provisions of this accord has rather been the Sri Lankan government itself has undermined, which the international community and even the Indian government should have to recognize that. Many provisions of that accord has been kind of undermined. And then whatever is left of that accord, if you are going about the 13th accord, and then you have to also look at the North and East province to be the united province, and which you had expressed. And then in terms of sharing of power, and then the sharing of power cannot come without constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendment, if you don't go for the constitutional amendment, if it can be only through an executive act, then it is a temporary process, and which can be defeated in the next parliament, because the next elections will be fought not on corruption, not on any kind of power excesses of the present government. It will be fought on the likely concessions that the present government may pretend to offer to the Tamils, and they will create an environment, they'll defeat it by themselves. This has been the destiny of the Tamil demands in Sri Lanka for the last 65 years, and the present and to the next years will not be different.